I vanished from my daughter's life for 17 straight years, forgave myself in private, then returned expecting her to obey my rules and abandon her books. She had 17 years of silence built up and she unleashed every word of it. Even my affair partner looked at me with disgust. My daughter called me a ghost who learned how to knock. She said it to my face. In a living room I hadn't been in since she was 2 years old. In front of my current wife. Who I left her mother for. And my wife. The woman I chose over my family 17 years ago. The woman I built a whole new life with. She looked at me after my daughter finished talking and she said, "I think we should go." Not to save me. Because she was ashamed of me. Because she heard what my daughter said and realized every word of it was true. My name is Randall. I'm 46. And I'm writing this because I walked into my daughter's life after 17 years of nothing and tried to act like a father. And she showed me exactly what I am. A stranger with outdated authority. A man who abandoned a 2-year-old and came back expecting a 19-year-old to call him dad. I need to tell this from the beginning. Because I've been telling myself a version of this story for 17 years and that version is a lie. And the truth is worse than anything my daughter said to me. Because she only had the pieces she could see. I have all of them. I married Brianna when I was 23. She was 21. We met in college. She was studying English literature. Always had a book in her hand. Always. I used to joke that she loved books more than people. She'd say, "Books don't disappoint me." I laughed at that. I didn't understand it yet. We got married fast. Too fast. I was 23 and thought I knew what I wanted. What I wanted was Brianna's face and Brianna's laugh and the way she looked at me like I'd invented something. I didn't want the work. I didn't want the boring Tuesday nights. I didn't want the budget conversations. I didn't want the apartment with the leaky faucet and the neighbor's dog barking at 6 a.m. Zoe was born when I was 25. Brianna was 23. I held my daughter in the hospital and I felt something I can't describe. Something massive. Something terrifying. Because I looked at that baby and I knew she needed things from me that I wasn't sure I had. Patience. Consistency. Presence. The things my own father never gave me. And instead of deciding to be different I decided to be gone. Not right away. I stayed for 2 years. But I was already leaving. 1 foot out the door for 24 months. Working late. Going out with friends. Picking up extra shifts I didn't need because the apartment felt small and the baby cried and Brianna was tired all the time and I felt like I was shrinking. Then I met Claudia. At a work conference in Dallas. She was a sales rep for a vendor. Dark hair. Loud laugh. No baby at home. No leaky faucet. No Tuesday night silence. She was everything Brianna used to be before real life set in. And I chose the feeling over the family. I slept with Claudia in a Marriott on a Thursday night while Brianna was at home giving Zoe a bath. I remember that because Brianna texted me a photo. Zoe in the tub. Bubbles on her nose. Smiling. I looked at the photo. I looked at Claudia. And I put my phone face down on the nightstand. 3 months later I told Brianna I wanted a divorce. I didn't tell her about Claudia. I said I wasn't happy. I said I felt trapped. I said I needed to find myself. Every coward script. Every line a man says when he's too weak to admit he chose someone else over his own child. Brianna didn't scream. She didn't throw things. She sat at the kitchen table with her hands flat on the surface and said, "What about Zoe?" I said, "I'll be involved. I'll call. I'll visit. I'll send money." She looked at me. She said, "Randall. She's 2. She won't remember this conversation. She'll only remember what you do after it." I said, "I know. I'll be there." I wasn't there. Divorce was final in 4 months. I moved to Tampa with Claudia. Brianna stayed in Charlotte with Zoe. I called for the first 2 months. Sporadic. Short calls. Zoe was 2. She'd babble on the phone and I'd say, "Daddy loves you." And then the calls got less frequent. Once a week became once every 2 weeks became once a month became maybe on her birthday. I sent child support for the first year. $600 a month. Court ordered. Then I changed jobs and the garnishment didn't transfer and I didn't set it up manually. Brianna called about it. I said I'd handle it. I didn't handle it. She called again. I said, "I'm between things right now. Give me a few weeks." A few weeks turned into a few months turned into nothing. She filed a contempt motion. I didn't show up to the hearing. She got a judgment. I ignored it. She stopped calling after that. Zoe turned 3. I didn't call. Turned 4. I sent a card. Late. Wrong age on it. Said happy 5th birthday. She was 4. I couldn't even remember how old my own daughter was. Turned 5. Nothing. 6. Nothing. 7. I thought about calling. Didn't. 8. Claudia and I got married. I didn't tell Brianna. Didn't tell Zoe. 9. 10. 11. 12. 13. 14. 15. 16. 17. 17 years. I'm going to write that number out because it deserves to be read slowly. 17 years of no phone calls. No birthday cards. No Christmas presents. No first day of school photos. No recitals. No graduations. No bedtime stories. No homework help. No driving lessons. No I'm proud of you. No I love you. No anything. My daughter grew up without a father because her father chose a woman in a Marriott hotel over a baby with bubbles on her nose. What did I do for 17 years? I built a life. A real one. With Claudia. We moved to Tampa. I got into construction management. Made good money. We bought a house. Had 2 sons. Colton and Reed. I coached their little league. I went to their school plays. I helped with homework. I taught them to ride bikes. I did every single thing for those boys that I refused to do for Zoe. Let me say that again. I was a present, involved, dedicated father to 2 boys. While my daughter grew up without one. And the worst part. The part I can barely type. I didn't feel guilty. For years. I didn't feel it. I told myself Brianna was fine. I told myself Zoe was young enough that she wouldn't remember me. I told myself kids are resilient. I told myself I'd reach out eventually when the time was right. I told myself every lie a deadbeat tells himself to sleep at night. The guilt came at 43. Colton was 8. He had a school project. Family tree. He asked me, Dad, do I have any sisters or brothers besides Reed? I looked at my son. I said, no. I denied her. My own daughter. To her half-brother. Because admitting she existed meant admitting what I did. And I wasn't ready. So I erased her. Claudia knew about Zoe. She'd always known. But we never talked about her. Zoe was a closed drawer in our marriage. Claudia never opened it. I never opened it. We just lived in a house where a whole person didn't exist because acknowledging her was too uncomfortable. That night after the family tree project, I sat in the garage and I felt it. All of it. 17 years of nothing compressing into one moment. My daughter was 19. I hadn't heard her voice since she was 2. I didn't know what she looked like. What she liked. What she studied. Whether she was okay. Whether she hated me. Whether she even thought about me at all. I told Claudia I wanted to reach out. She was quiet. Then she said, are you sure? I said, I have 2. She said, Randall. It's been 17 years. You can't just show up. I said, I know. But I have to try. I found Brianna on Facebook. Her profile picture was her and Zoe. Zoe was beautiful. Tall. Braids. Glasses. She looked like Brianna but with my jawline. My eyes. She was standing in front of a building holding a certificate. The caption said, my daughter. Full scholarship. English literature. Like mama, like daughter. English literature. Like her mother. Books. She grew up loving books. Just like Brianna. I stared at that photo for an hour. I sent Brianna a message. I said, Brianna, it's Randall. I know I have no right to reach out. I know what I did. I've been doing a lot of reflecting and I'd like the chance to connect with Zoe if she's open to it. I understand if she's not. Brianna replied 3 days later. She said, I'll ask her. But Randall. She's not a child anymore. She's a grown woman. A strong one. If she agrees to meet you, I need you to understand that you're meeting her on her terms. Not yours. I said, I understand. 1 week later. Brianna texted. She said, Zoe will meet you. Saturday. 2 p.m. Our house. She has conditions. You come alone. You listen. And you don't tell her how to feel. I said, okay. I didn't come alone. I brought Claudia. Because I was afraid. Because I thought having my wife there would make me look stable. Settled. Redeemed. I thought if Zoe saw that I'd built a life, she'd see proof that I'd changed. That I was capable of commitment. That the man who left was different from the man who came back. I also brought Claudia because I am a coward and I've always needed someone next to me to feel strong enough to face the things I've done. Saturday. 2 p.m. I parked outside Brianna's house. Charlotte. Same neighborhood. Different house. A small Cape Cod with a garden out front. Books in the window. Actual books stacked on the windowsill. Brianna's touch. Claudia said, are you sure I should come in? I said, yeah. It'll be fine. It was not fine. Brianna opened the door. She looked at me. Older. Tired in the way single mothers get tired. The permanent kind. Then she looked at Claudia. Her face didn't change. She said, she wasn't invited. I said, this is my wife Claudia. I thought it would be good for Zoe to see. Brianna stared at me for 3 seconds. She said, you brought the woman you left us for into my house to meet the daughter you abandoned. She paused. Then she said, come in. Both of you. Zoe can decide how she wants to handle this. We walked in. The living room was small. Warm. Books everywhere. Bookshelves on every wall. Stacked on the coffee table. On the stairs. I saw titles I didn't recognize. Literature. Philosophy. Poetry. This house was built on words. The opposite of the silence I'd given them. Zoe was sitting on the couch. She didn't stand up. She was wearing jeans and a university sweatshirt. Her glasses were on top of her head. She had a book in her lap. Closed. Face down. Like she'd been reading and stopped when she heard the door. She looked at me. She didn't smile. She didn't frown. She looked at me the way you look at a package you didn't order. Curious. Suspicious. Not excited. She looked at Claudia. Then back at me. She said, "Mom said you'd come alone." I said, "I know. I thought." She said, "You thought wrong. Sit down." We sat. Brianna stood in the doorway to the kitchen. Arms crossed. Not participating. Watching. I said, "Zoe. Thank you for seeing me. I know this is." She held up her hand. She said, Don't start with a speech. I've imagined this conversation since I was 9 years old. You don't get to set the tone." "I do." I closed my mouth. She said, "You left when I was 2. I don't remember you. Not your face. Not your voice. Not what you smelled like. Not whether you held me or just stood in the room while Mom did everything. I have 0 memories of you. You're not a bad memory. You're not even a memory. You're an absence. A shape where a person should have been." She said, "I used to ask Mom where my dad was. She said, he lives in another state. He's busy." She never said you were bad. She never said you were a deadbeat. She never said you chose someone else. She protected your image for years. Years. Until I was 12 and I found the court documents in a box in the closet. Child support. Contempt motion. Unpaid. For 9 years. I did the math myself. $600 a month times 12 months times 9 years. $64,800. You owed my mother $64,800 and you paid 0 of it. I said, She said, "I'm not done." She said, "I went to school with kids who had dads. Every Father's Day I made a card for Grandpa because there was nobody else to give it to. Career Day. No dad. Father-daughter dance. Didn't go. Sat at home and read a book. Every single event designed for 2 parents I showed up with 1. And Mom showed up for both. She worked 2 jobs. She read to me every night. She drove me to every practice. Every competition. Every library event. She did it all. On a teacher's salary. With no help. While you were in Tampa coaching Little League for the sons you actually wanted." I felt sick. Physically. She said, "I know about Colton and Reed. I found them on Instagram. Your sons. The ones you stayed for. The ones you coached and drove to school and helped with homework. I've seen the photos. Birthday parties. Christmas mornings. Baseball games. Camping trips. Everything you never did for me. You did for them. Same man. Same hands. Different children. The only difference between me and them is that their mother is the woman you chose. And my mother is the woman you threw away." Claudia shifted in her seat. She was staring at the floor. Zoe said, "And you brought her. Here. To this house. Where Mom raised me alone for 17 years. You brought the woman you left us for and sat her on our couch like she's part of the reunion. She's not part of this. She's the reason for this." Claudia said, Zoe said, "I'm not talking to you. I'll get to you." The room was silent. Brianna hadn't moved from the doorway. Zoe looked at me. She said, "Mom told me you said you've been reflecting." "Reflecting? That's a nice word. Passive. Soft. Like something you do in a journal with a candle lit. You didn't reflect, Randall. You waited. You waited until the hard part was over. Until Mom had already done the work. Until I was already raised. Already in college. Already a person. And then you showed up with your wife and your reflection and expected what? A hug. Gratitude. A second chance. From a daughter you didn't build. You showed up for the ribbon cutting of a building you didn't lay a single brick for." I said, "I know I missed everything." She said, "You didn't miss it. Missing implies you were trying and couldn't make it. You chose not to be there. Every day for 17 years you woke up and chose not to call. Not to write. Not to send money. Not to ask one question about whether your daughter could read or ride a bike or was afraid of the dark. You chose Tampa. You chose Claudia. You chose Colton and Reed. And you chose them every single morning for 6,205 mornings. That's not missing. That's a decision. Repeated 6,205 times. 6,205. She'd counted the days. My daughter calculated the number of mornings I chose not to be her father. That number is going to follow me until I die." She said, "And now you want to connect. Now. After Mom did everything. After Grandpa walked me to the father-daughter dance when I was 15 because I finally agreed to go and he put on a suit and learned to waltz from YouTube. After my English teacher Mrs. Kavanaugh wrote my college recommendation and called me the most determined student she'd ever taught. After Mom's boyfriend Jerome taught me to change a tire and check my oil and sat in the parking lot for my driver's test because someone needed to be there and my actual father was in Tampa grilling hot dogs for his real family. Jerome. Brianna's boyfriend. A man who showed up for my daughter while I was teaching my sons to ride bikes. She said, "You know what I used to do? When I was little and Mom was at her second job and Grandpa was watching me. I used to sit by the window with a book. And I'd read. But every few pages I'd look up. At the street. At the cars going by. I didn't know what you looked like. I didn't know what car you drove. But I sat there anyway. Waiting. For a car to slow down. For someone to park. For a knock on the door. I did that until I was 11. Then I stopped looking. Because the books were more real than you were. The characters in the story showed up every time I opened the page. You never showed up once. I was crying. I couldn't help it. Claudia was crying. She said, "Don't cry. You don't get to cry. Crying is for people who lost something. You didn't lose me. You left me. There's a difference. And I need you to hear it because the version of this story you've been telling yourself for 17 years is wrong. You didn't lose your daughter. You abandoned her. And you don't get to grieve something you voluntarily threw away." She turned to Claudia. She said, "And you? You knew about me. For 17 years. You knew your husband had a daughter in Charlotte. You knew he wasn't calling. Wasn't paying. Wasn't showing up. And you said nothing. You didn't push him. You didn't say, 'Randall, call your daughter.' You didn't say, 'Randall, this is wrong.' You let him erase me because my existence was inconvenient to the life you built together. You're not an innocent bystander. You're an accomplice." Claudia opened her mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. She said, "You're right." Zoe said, "I know I'm right. I've had 17 years to figure out exactly how right I am." She looked back at me. She said, "You want to know why I agreed to this meeting? Not for reconciliation. Not for closure. I agreed because I wanted to look at you. In person. And see if I felt anything." She paused. She said, "I don't. I looked at you and I felt nothing. No anger. No sadness. No longing. Nothing. You're a stranger who happens to share my DNA. That's it. And I'm okay with that. Because Mom filled every space you left. She filled it with books and love and consistency and effort, and she never once made me feel like I was missing something. I wasn't missing anything. You were missing. And the only person who lost something in those 17 years was you." She stood up. Picked up the book from the couch. She said, "I'm going to my room now. You can leave whenever you're ready. But don't come back. Don't call. Don't write. Don't send birthday cards 17 years late. I don't need you to reflect anymore. I needed you to show up. And the deadline for that passed about 6,000 mornings ago." She walked upstairs. We heard the door close. Not a slam. A click. Quiet. Deliberate. Brianna looked at me from the kitchen doorway. She said, "She's been writing that speech since she was 12. She has notebooks. Full of things she wanted to say to you. She read them to me once. At the kitchen table. She was 14. She read for 45 minutes. I just sat there and listened to my daughter say goodbye to a man who was already gone." I stood up. Claudia stood up. Brianna walked us to the door. At the door I said, "Brianna. I'm sorry." She said, "I know you are. But sorry is a verb, Randall. It requires action. And you've spent 17 years treating it like a feeling you can have in private and expect it to count. It doesn't count until someone else can see it." We drove back to the hotel. 45 minutes of silence. Claudia stared out the window the entire time. In the hotel room she sat on the edge of the bed. She said, "Randall. I need to say something." I said, "What?" She said, "She was right. About me. I knew about Zoe. I knew you weren't calling. I knew you stopped paying child support. And I never said anything. Because it was easier. Because bringing up Zoe meant bringing up the affair. And bringing up the affair meant questioning the foundation of everything we built. So I stayed quiet. For 17 years. And a 19-year-old girl just told me exactly what that silence cost. She said, I looked at her. In that living room. Sitting on that couch. Surrounded by books. Raised by a woman who did everything alone. And I thought about Colton and Reed. How they have two parents. How they've never missed a meal or a game or a bedtime story. And I realized that the life we gave our sons is the life we stole from your daughter. She said, I'm not angry at you right now. I'm disgusted. And I'm disgusted at myself. Because I saw that girl's face and I knew. I knew she was right about every single word. I sat in a hotel room in Charlotte and my wife told me she was disgusted by me. By us. By the 17 years of silence we maintained together while a little girl sat by a window with a book waiting for a car that never came. I flew back to Tampa. Went home. Colton ran to the door. He said, Dad, you're back. I picked him up. I held him. And I thought about a 2-year-old with bubbles on her nose whose father put his phone face down on a nightstand. Same hands. Different children. I tried therapy. 3 sessions so far. The therapist asked me what I wanted. I said, I want to fix it. She said, fix what? I said, my relationship with Zoe. She said, what relationship? You don't have one. You have a biological connection and 17 years of absence. A relationship requires presence. Investment. History. Trust. You have none of those things. You can't fix something that was never built. I said, so what do I do? She said, you sit with it. You accept that your daughter doesn't owe you forgiveness or access or a relationship. You accept that Brianna did the job you refused to do and she did it brilliantly. You accept that Zoe is a whole complete person who was raised without you and doesn't need you to be complete. And you ask yourself an honest question. Did you come back for her? Or did you come back for you? I didn't answer. Because the answer is obvious. I came back for me. To ease my guilt. To feel like a redeemed man. To get the emotional reward of reconciliation without having done any of the work. I wanted the hug. The tears. The dad I missed you. I wanted the movie version. Not the real one. The real one is a 19-year-old girl with glasses and a book in her lap telling me I'm a stranger. And being completely correct. Colton asked me last week, Dad, can you help me with my book report? I said, sure buddy. What book? He said, Charlotte's Web. I sat next to him and helped him write about a spider who saved a pig with words. And I thought about a girl in Charlotte who saved herself with books because her father gave her nothing else to hold on to. My daughter reads because her mother reads. My daughter is in college on a full scholarship because her mother worked 2 jobs to make sure she never fell behind. My daughter is strong because Brianna is strong. My daughter is whole because Brianna filled every hole I left. I did not build that girl. I did not shape her. I did not teach her. I did not read to her. I did not drive her. I did not sit with her. I did not show up for her. Not once. Not ever. And when I finally showed up 17 years too late with my affair partner on my arm and my reflection in my pocket, she looked me in the eye and said the thing I'd been running from since she was 2. I don't need you. 3 words. From a daughter I abandoned. Who sat by a window with a book for 9 years waiting for a knock that never came. She doesn't need me. She never did. Brianna made sure of that. And I made sure of it too. Every morning for 6,205 mornings. My daughter has books. She has her mother. She has her grandfather. She has Jerome. She has Mrs. Kavanaugh. She has a full scholarship and a university sweatshirt and a living room full of words written by people who showed up on every page. I have a hotel receipt from a Marriott in Dallas and a wife who can't look at me the same way since a 19-year-old girl told her the truth in a living room full of books. My daughter doesn't need me. But I need her to know that I know that. I need her to know that I heard every word. And that she was right about all of it. She said the books were more real than me. She was right. The characters showed up every time she opened the page. I didn't show up once.